Hans watched from the secret perch. The secret perch Satoo had shared with him months ago. He had to see what was going on. He felt kind of disappointed, first of all. He really had wanted to go fishing. Satoo had talked so many times about how fun it was to go out and go fishing, although it was dangerous, you know. There were sharks out in the ocean there. You didn't want to go into the water. And the nets were big, and sometimes you could get hurt. But Hans really had wanted to go. But no, Gola was just taking Satoo along. And Guru Mula, the Islam teacher. He watched as the boat sailed off, seeing the three of them, preparing the nets, laying them out inside the boat and getting ready. As they sailed on a curve, kind of along the shore, in between where Hans sat on the perch overlooking the ocean, and across the bay where the fire mountain was rumbling and thundering. But it looked to Satoo like they weren't really heading to the normal places they would go fishing. It was very uncommon for the people of the village now to try to go fishing anywhere near the fire mountain. Not only because of all the ruckus that it made and they were scared of the fire spirits, but also because it seemed like there weren't as many fish in that area. Usually they would go the opposite direction, up the beach. Hans was going to watch them a little while longer, but then he happened to look back over his shoulder and see up the beach at the village lots of action going on. It looked like people were pulling things out of their houses. Yeah, the villagers were all grabbing things, setting things out into the village square. They're cooking pots, piles of food, wrapped up bundles, rolled up sleeping mats. And Hans realized, hey, the people are packing up their village. They must be evacuating the village. Oh, maybe there is a plan after all for them to try to avoid getting hurt if the volcano erupts. Maybe we should do that too. Hans ran back down the trail from the secret perch, behind the trail, on the trail hidden by boulders and bushes, back down to his father's house to talk with him. By the time he got there to talk with his father, 30 villagers had arrived as well. The 30 villagers who had all been following God, worshiping God, and who had been looking so different lately compared to the rest of the villagers, and definitely from the Islam teachers. They came, those villagers, to report that Chief Meriden had sent them there. We were packing to join the others to go up the hills. They are going to go and make a temporary village way up high in the hills and jungle, away from the ocean, so that they are safe in case the mountain erupts. But Chief Meriden told us, those of us who worship God, that we could not come along. He said, go to the teacher. He will save you because you cannot come with us. The fire spirits will soon destroy the teacher's house and get rid of him forever. And the villagers were scared. All of them, wide-eyed and worried looks on their faces. And the teacher handled that situation the way he'd handled everything that had challenged him in the months that he had been there serving on that island. He prayed. He prayed to the God of heaven, and his words carried with them so much hope and faith, so much confidence in God's ability to protect, that the people all felt calmer. And then after he prayed, they sang. They sang hymns. And after they sang hymns, they prayed again. And after they prayed, they sang again. And they were there like that for at least a couple of hours until the villagers all started to feel calmer, feel better about what was going on. And in fact, they said, we'll go back to the village and sleep there tonight. We'll come back again. They headed back to the village early. It was just early evening. And in the meantime, Hans went back up onto the secret perch to see what else he could see now. Maybe by this point the fishing boat would be coming back, and he could greet Satoo and at least help unload the fish. He climbed up on the perch to look and see, and there was the boat, but it was awfully close to the fire mountain. Way closer than the boat would ever want to get. I mean, the men of the village had not taken a boat that close in a long time to try to look for the bird eggs. There was no way that these men would try to go fishing that close to the island. He watched as the boat actually bumped up onto the beach. He saw a flurry of motion, and then he saw the boat sailing away from the beach. Did they see a bird's nest? Did they stop to get bird eggs, perhaps? He watched a minute longer, started to get kind of tired, and then his eyes, which had improved somewhat with all the staring out into the ocean that he'd done over the months, he was able to focus enough to see that no, there was something on the whiteness of the beach. It looked like a little black dot. They had left something on the beach. And then his eyes focused down to the boat as it approached the shoreline of the villager's island, the Great Sangir Island. And his eyes counted how many people were in the boat. And when he saw how many people were in the boat, Hans stood up with a yelp of fright and ran down the trail hidden by boulders and bushes, down to the shoreline to meet the boat. And as it bumped up onto the beach, pretty close to where the missionary's house was, Hans ran up to be greeted by Gola and Guru Mula, but no Satoo. Where is Satoo? He said in their language. And they made him to understand with sad looks on their faces. We have bad news. Bad news for Chief Meriden. His son Satoo helped us with fishing. He stood up in the boat to help untangle a net and fell over the side. He became tangled in the net, and as we struggled to pull him free, that is when the sharks came. And that is when Hans turned and ran up the beach to his father's house, screeching at the top of his lungs, screeching in his language, the language that Gola and Guru Mula couldn't speak. Dad! Dad! Dad, they left Satoo on the volcano! Dad! He ran inside the house and told his dad the story and his suspicions of how Satoo had said that they were still going to make plans for him, how Gola had come and Guru Mula, and they had taken him up and they wouldn't let Hans go. That must have been why they had a plan. His father did not rush out the door. His father said, wait. And they stood inside the house and looked out the window and over the stone wall out towards the beach as Gola and Guru Mula waved their hands for help. And from down way up the hill behind the teacher's house came help. The other two Islam teachers and a few of the other villagers. And they came down and began to unload fish. They had fish in the boat. They had captured fish, obviously, and they were taking loads of fish up the hill, up to the Islam teacher's house. It took a couple of loads as they went back and forth. And all the time Hans was just aching to run out and do something, aching to run out and accuse, or to run out and get a boat and head to the island. He didn't know what to do. And as he was watching this happen, he heard a loud noise from the direction of the fire mountain. Now that may not sound unusual to you because there have been loud noises coming from the fire mountain for a long time, but this was a louder one than they'd heard in quite a while. And when he looked, he saw a line of yellow on the beach, splitting the beach in two, the beach of the fire mountain, a line of yellow that looked as if it was running down, and where the line of yellow met the water, there was a hiss of smoke shooting upwards. And Hans couldn't tell from here whether there was still a black dot on the beach or not. But his father still said, wait, until finally the last load of fish was taken, and then his father moved into action, rushing out of the house, down the beach to where his father's own boat was, and the boat that Chief Meriden had helped him make. And Hans was on his heels. I'm coming with you. No, you cannot. It is too dangerous. The volcano is too close to eruption. You stay here and pray. And before Hans could say anything further, his father was in the boat and gone towards the fire mountain, towards the volcano, towards a place of great danger. And it was a place of great danger. Satoo had found that out for himself earlier that day. The initial boat trip out with Guru Mula and Gola had gone as all fishing trips do. They'd been preparing their nets, and making sure they had their harpoons ready and their sacks for containing the fish. Although it was strange to Satoo as well that the boat veered more off towards where the fire mountain side was as opposed to away from the fire mountain. As they passed between the secret perch area and the fire mountain, Satoo had looked over and watched as molten rocks shot up out of the volcano every once in a while, as some melted rock ran down one side of the volcano, and the smoke reached out to where they were. Tendrils of smoke, enough to make the eyes sting and the nose get stuffy. They sailed past and around a further curve of Great Sangier Island to where there were actually a lot of fish. They caught lots of fish, many loads of fish, and Satoo helped as Guru Mula and Gola strained their muscles and loaded the boat. The boat was well loaded, and Guru Mula and Satoo and Gola worked hard under the hot sun of the day. Very hard, and Satoo was getting quite hungry. And as they finally finished with the last catch, and the boat turned to start heading back up along the coastline, Satoo was so hungry and so tired, he sat down between some of the bundles of fish and rested his head on one of the still flapping bundles and kind of dozed. It's easy to doze in a boat when it's hot and you've worked hard. And he dozed for quite a while until something woke him. Something in his nose woke him up. It was that strong smoke smell again, but it was stronger than before, and it was making his eyes water, and he woke up coughing to look and to see that they were very close to the fire mountain. The closest that Satoo had ever been. And he looked at Gola and said, "Aren't we too close?" And Gola didn't answer. He looked at Guru Mula. Isn't it dangerous for us to be this close? And Guru Mula didn't answer. And Satoo crouched and watched as they drew closer. And suddenly the boat lunged forward as both men put paddles in the water with strength, lunged the boat forward, and as it rammed into the prow, Satoo staggered, and his stagger was followed by 2 pairs of strong arms under him as they lifted him and threw him out into the beach. He landed, the wind was knocked out of him, and before he could even get his mouth open to be able to call to them to stop, stop, he struggled up, and they were already pushing back from the beach and out into the deeper water. It was a good 10 seconds before he could catch his air enough to scream to them to stop, stop. But by that point, they had already turned the boat, and they were paddling furiously away. But he did scream. He screamed in terror, he screamed in fright, he screamed in anguish, as the rumbling around his ears was so loud that he could barely hear his own scream. As the smoke filled his lungs so much that his scream ended in a cough. As the shaking of the mountain underneath him shook so much that his scream ended with him on his knees. And Satoo wondered what to do now. Would he just stay there and just be burned to death? Could he swim? Could he swim out enough to catch up to the boat? He was a strong swimmer. But there were sharks. Or could he sing? He could sing. And he sang, and nobody on that island heard him sing. Nobody on the fire mountain heard him sing. He barely heard himself sing because the rumble was so loud. But he sang. A mighty mountain is our God, a wall that never falls. And then he sang it again. A mighty mountain is our God, a wall that never falls. And then he prayed. He had prayed a lot now since he had learned to pray with Hans up on that secret perch. But he prayed differently than ever before because his prayer this time was not for salvation. His prayer was not for rescue. His prayer was for bravery. His prayer was for strength to make it through whatever was going to happen. And it was in the middle of his prayer that he was knocked to the ground as just feet away from him, a gigantic crack opened in the ground. The boom of molten rock pulsing out of the crack knocked him to his feet, knocked him to his back. And the heat radiating out from that crack, full of molten lava, almost made his skin start to blister. He scrambled back from it as it widened further, and as molten lava rushed down to the sea, and as smoke spewed out. And the heat was so much for him that as he turned and tried to get away, he fainted flat onto his face.